So the modern world is defined by constant, inevitable change. I'm going to rephrase. The world is defined by constant, inevitable change. This has always been true. It's not a new thing. Plato lamented that the introduction of text would lead to people not knowing anything. The Christian church was worried about the printing press. They thought it would allow for people to share false information. In 1890, Mark Twain wrote a famous Christmas letter where he said that he wished heavens of everlasting bliss and peace to everybody except for the inventor of the telephone. People have always been concerned about change. This is Anthony Wood. He's an Oxford academic from 1677, and he thought that the downfall of society was that too many young people were spending all their time in coffee houses. So change has always been happening around us. It's not always easy to see the change in real time. Sometimes you need something to kind of stop you in your tracks that makes you realize the change that's happening around you. Like movies is a good example here. Sometimes you see a movie scene, it's like that one does not hold up. This is my example of that. Oh, I see the faces already. Blasphemy, right? The cantina scene, the famous scene, doesn't hold up. This is objectively a ridiculous movie scene that could only exist in 1977. So this is my example of that. Whenever I see this, I realize the world has passed us by. But on the other way as well, there are always things that, regardless of the change around us, they stand the test of time. And for me, the DoD and the government's inability to develop digital talent, that holds up, right? This is a tale as long as time too. So we've all been doing this for years, right? There's been study after study, initiative after initiative, conference talk after conference talk. Every one of these you go to, there's the one people talk they'll throw in there just to make sure we care about it, right? We all come here, we listen to the problems, we enjoy it, we all agree, nod our heads, we don't do anything about it. Then we go to the next conference, do the same thing all over again. We've created a bit of like a government needs to do talent better traveling economy. We're like the Warped Tour of government agenda topics. But the reality is it's because this is safe. This is an easy talk. I can come in here, say all the stuff that you guys believe. Nobody's going to disagree. There's no controversy here, right? But I don't want to do that. I want to spend the next 20 minutes saying people are our greatest resource. We need to invest in them more. The mission depends on it. We all agree with that already. I want to know why we can't move forward and why we're still in the same place that we are. So last year I did a talk here about introducing product frameworks and product practices. And the point of it was, okay, we take all these patterns from experts, but how do we apply it to our context and our constraints, the uniqueness that makes the DoD as unique as it does? I also talked about country music. I made everybody listen to the same country song 5 songs in a row. And Brian told me I couldn't do that this year, so I'm going to get a little bit different, creative in a different way. But we are still going to talk about constraints and context for now, talent management. But before we do that, I want to establish a little bit of credibility. So I've been in this like DoD software game for a long time. So pre-2014, that's what I call the dark ages. Can you go back one? All right, the dark ages, there we go. This is me. This is pre-2014. This is before there was any hope that in the DoD we're going to have reasonable software, that our lives within the SCIF were going to be the same as the ones outside of it. We didn't really have any hope for the future. But right after this, we had the Enlightenment period, 2015 to 2017. We started to see these glimmers of hope across the government, right? USDS, 18F. We saw things at NGA. And all of us in the DoD were like, wow, there's something happening over there. How can we learn from that and bring it into the DoD in our unique context? That'd be really great. So that led to the rise of the software factory, right? This was an exciting time for everybody. All of us who built these teams, it was really exciting. We were finally making change from within, inside the bureaucracy. It only lasted for a little while, though. Then we had the revenge of the bureaucracy, right? This is the last couple of years. The bureaucracy got a little bit concerned about all the unauthorized change that was happening right within it. So they came and they knocked us right back to where we started from. During the rise of the software factories, Brian and I, we got airlifted from Hanscom Air Force Base directly to the White House. We had to give a briefing to the president. I can't believe he didn't tell this story this morning. So there we were. We came into the situation room here. We're actually here in this picture in the back. Those are our heads, though. We're not those two guys. We're the other guys in the back there, right? So we go in there, and the president says, "Who are these dudes?" And General Goldfein, at the time, the Air Force Chief of Staff, said, "These are the guys from Kessel Run. They're here to help." And he's like, if you're any good, if you're as good as the general said you were, we're in very good hands. It's pretty cool, right? All right, none of this stuff ever happened. But listen, this is the actual plot of an actual fan fiction book written about Kessel Run that you can buy on Amazon right now. Using that QR code, you can check it out. It's pretty cool. I had nothing to do with this. I get no proceeds, but I have contributed the most purchases and reviews of this so far. What I learned there is you can listen to all the experts and the patterns, read all the books and all the things. You have to apply them to your unique constraints, particularly in a place like the DoD, where all we have is constraints. It's what makes us the DoD. So what I wanted to do really quickly here was think back to this time in my experience and kind of highlight a few of the things that stood out as unique to doing talent management or thinking about people within the DoD space. What I want you all to do is think about some of these things, and I want you to think about your own kind of journeys and if these have applied to you at any point of your career, whether that's individually in your team or organization. We'll go through this pretty quickly. All right, the first one, there was a lack of urgency. Everywhere I went, I felt like I was the only one who thought this was a real problem. So my entire job just became trying to convince a stakeholder or my boss or somebody that we have to invest in this area. It is the mission. And, they don't always listen, but it becomes like you're like to end up being like Charlie Brown teacher every once in a while because you're just the guy, it's Adam's going to talk to us about like agile evangelizing stuff. So that was really frustrating. That was a real problem we had. We also had this problem of digital atrophy, right? We had outsourced all of our technical talent to a bunch of contractors. So inside the government, we didn't have that natural technical talent anymore. And that wasn't just for the organic product teams. It was also for all the other functions that had to know digital things in order to be effective, whether that's procuring, contract, and that sort of thing. So we had to really build all of that back. The military rotations we had were absolute killer. Every time we had some hotshot lieutenant that we finally built up, he'd finally be useful to us. He'd be shipped out to some other job where he certainly wasn't using those skills and whatever the next thing was. Also, this is a bit of an aside here, but it's kind of a wild way to work, right? So imagine like you're Siobhan and you're in Kohl's, and then your boss comes in, the CEO of Kohl's, and it's like, all right, it's time for career broadening, all right? So what you're going to do is we're going to switch your job. You're going to now be the CFO. We'll send you to Alabama for like a month. You'll figure it out. But when you walk in there, just talk to the guy who's packing his office up. He'll give you the lay of the land, and he's going to go ahead to be the CTO next. It's like a wild way to work and the way that we have to deal with all this stuff. The talent retention problems also true on the civilian side. We had to make sure that the upskilling that happened on the civilian end didn't also just lead to them leaving because they were tired of the red tape, or the money was better, or all these other things that we had to deal with, right? So we're constantly like plugging holes where we had finally just developed the necessary talent we needed. We didn't really value technical skills, right? Pay was based more on if you took calculus in undergrad than if you could do your job. And then scaling leadership was super hard, right? We had to scale our organization pretty widely, so we had to push up a lot of people who maybe weren't ready for those leadership roles. And in retrospect, they did a pretty good job for what we asked them to do. It was really hard to scale leadership. So sometimes we had to take our best technical talent, push them into management roles, take them out of the things that they really like to do. Or maybe they saw that they had to go to management because there wasn't a career path for them that would really allow them to progress. Okay. So this is my only audience participation ask for now. How many of you have dealt with any of those things in your career? In the DoD. All right, that's right. Okay, good. So I have to admit something to everybody. I've been thinking about this talk, and I really wanted to do something like original and different, and I was like, the country music last year, Brian didn't like it, so I didn't know. But I wanted to think of something. The reality was, like, the content hasn't changed at all, though. This is a really hard talk to do new, because everything's been the same, right? None of these problems should be new to anyone here because they aren't. In fact, we have the same issues for a long time. So much so that every single issue I just went through is written about in this study right here. This is the report of the DoD Joint Service Task Force on Software Problems that was commissioned in 1982. All right, so this blew my mind when I read it. And shout out to the Defense Innovation Board and their SWAP study. There's a whole page in there of like former historical studies and things that kind of led to our state today. But I never read the source material until recently, and this thing blew my mind. As you read through this document, it reads like the last 10 years of my life.